nothing in Netflix's Avatar world is as innocent as it looks. And by bringing Azula into the game early in the first season, they sent us a very clear message. We're rewriting the rules from the start. So as Book 2, Earth, one of the most iconic seasons in animation history, gets adapted into live action, how is that untouchable story from our childhood going to evolve? Today, we are not just talking about Toph's arrival. We are also talking about 5 critical theories that could completely change the direction of the series. From Zuko's family drama exploding much earlier than expected, to the spy moves hidden in the dark corridors of Ba Sing Se, and the massive loss that could spiritually shatter Aang. But before we get into the details, do not forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. Guys, let's be honest here. Avatar Season 2 is not out yet. So what we are talking about today is not confirmed spoilers, and it is definitely not a list of things that have already happened. But when you look at the path Netflix took in the first season, you can kind of predict what major story changes they could make in the second season. And honestly, I think that is the fun part of all this. Because in a universe like Avatar, people are not just obsessed with what is going to happen, they are also obsessed with how are they going to change it. And after watching the first season, that curiosity only got bigger. Because Netflix did not keep certain things hidden for a long time the way the animation did. They pushed Azula forward much earlier. They made Ozai's side of the story more visible. They let us feel the family pressure on Zuko right from the start. And they built some of the emotional conflicts much earlier as well. So what they really told us was this: I am not going to copy the animation scene for scene, but I am going to take its core spirit and build my own dramatic structure around it. And I think that is the biggest clue we have when talking about Season 2. And Book 2. Earth was already a very special season in the animated series too, because this is not just the season where Toph arrives. It is also the season where Azula truly becomes terrifying, where the Ba Sing Se intrigue gets much darker, where Jet's story hardens, and where Aang is spiritually broken by Appa's loss. So Netflix can either stay very faithful here, or keep the same backbone while seriously changing the order and tone of events. My theory is that they are going to lean more toward the second option. My first big prediction is this: the open conflict between Azula and Zuko will grow much earlier than it did in the animation. Because in the animated version, Azula's pressure kept building little by little, but Netflix already pulled this character directly into the game in Season 1. That means they do not need to spend time in Season 2 saying, let's get to know Azula first, let's wait a little, and then let's slowly feel her impact. And to me, that means Zuko is going to confront his family much more quickly this season. And honestly, if they make that change, I would not be surprised at all. Because Zuko is at his strongest when he is dealing with inner conflict. In the first season, we watched him as someone chasing honor, not really knowing what to do, but still carrying something good inside him. If Azula comes at him earlier and harder, then the breaking point he reaches this season could become much more emotional. In other words, this season may not just be a chase season for Zuko, it could be the season where he truly begins to realize who he is. And the fact that we saw Omashu fall in the Season 1 finale only strengthens that possibility. Because now the Earth Kingdom side has become a much more open battlefield. In an environment like that, bringing Azula into the field earlier raises the pace and also raises the pressure on Zuko from the very first episodes. And honestly, Netflix already showed in the first season that it loves family drama, so I really think the Azula-Zuko storyline could become one of the biggest emotional explosions of the season. My second major theory is that Toph's introduction will be handled in a heavier, more emotional, and slightly darker way than it was in the animation. Officially, we already know Toph is coming this season, and she will be played by Mia Chek. Tudum also put major emphasis on Toph's arrival. But the real question is this: how is Netflix going to introduce her? Because in the animated series, Toph's introduction was so fun, so cool, and so full of charisma. The Blind Bandit section felt like a total show. But on the live-action side, I think it is going to play out a little differently. Because Netflix generally likes to make character trauma and emotional weight much more visible. So the pressure Toph feels from her family, the whole "you are weak, you need protection, you cannot do things on your own" mindset, and her rejection of that artificial life could all be written in a much harsher way. So Toph may not arrive just as the cool girl who turns out to be insanely strong. She may also arrive as someone destroying the fake destiny her own family tried to force on her. And I think the most critical point here will be this: they need to strengthen not just how powerful Toph is, but also why she feels she has to join the group. We understood that in the animation, but live action could turn it into a much more dramatic confrontation. Maybe the conflict with her family is written in a heavier way. Maybe the Blind Bandit identity becomes a more emotional symbol of rebellion, because Toph is not just about being strong. Her whole thing is that everyone misreads her while she feels the world more clearly than anyone else. And that idea could work incredibly well in live action. The third big theory is that Jet's storyline in Ba Sing Se will become more political and more focused on espionage than it was in the animated series, because we already saw Jet in Season 1. That means Netflix does not need to reintroduce him in Season 2 like, oh look, who is this guy? They can go straight into a harsher, more suspicious, more obsessive version of him. And even in the animated series, Jet became an important character on the Ba Sing Se side, someone who starts tracking Zuko and Iroh, trying to figure out who they really are, and sensing the lies running through the city. And Ba Sing Se is not just a normal city anyway. On the outside, it looks peaceful, orderly, and majestic. But inside, the war is denied, information is suppressed, the Dai Li control everything, and people are basically forced to live outside the truth. In a place like that, characters like Jet automatically become more interesting. So if Netflix wants to, it could write Jet not just as the suspicious rebel kid, but as something more like a street-level agent who can smell the rot underneath the system. And honestly, that would fit him really well. And that would also make the Zuko storyline even stronger. Because in the animation, Jet's suspicion of Zuko mattered, but if live action writes that more intensely, then that relationship stops being just a side story. Jet could become more than just the guy trying to expose Zuko's real identity. He could also become one of the first witnesses to Ba Sing Se's fake peace. And if that happens, then the city intrigue episodes would not feel slower. They would feel more tense, more paranoid, and more political. And honestly, I would love to see Netflix try that. My fourth theory is that Iroh's White Lotus connections will be felt much earlier. Because in the animated series, Iroh's Ba Sing Se period unfolds in a very warm, human, and peaceful way. And that was part of what made the character so beautiful. But we all know Iroh is not just a kind-hearted uncle type of character. His past, his wisdom, his experience in war, and his White Lotus ties make him one of the heaviest figures in the entire universe. Since Netflix already revealed many things earlier in Season 1, I think it is very possible that we will see something similar with Iroh too. For example, the tea shop era could still happen, and honestly, I think it absolutely should. But that period might not be handled only as Iroh found a quiet life. It could also be handled as Iroh sees a much bigger picture behind the scenes. Small hints, a few secret contacts, a couple of symbolic scenes that connect to the White Lotus side. All of that would fit live action really well. Because Iroh's calmness is already powerful. The real question is whether they show us a little earlier what kind of strategic mind is hiding beneath that calmness. And that would also strengthen Zuko's transformation. Because in Ba Sing Se, Zuko is not just someone hiding. He becomes someone who, together with his uncle, sees for the first time that another kind of life is possible. If Iroh is written in a more strategic and more intentional way here, then for Zuko, he is not just a well-meaning older family member. He becomes a guide who saw what was right long before anyone else did. And I think that could work even more strongly in live action, because the series' language in general is more direct, more explanatory, and more willing to make heavier dramatic choices. And now we come to my fifth theory, and I think it is the most powerful one. Appa's kidnapping could become an even more devastating psychological break this season than it was in the animation. Because in the animated series, Appa's loss was already a massive trauma for Aang. Appa's lost days is unforgettable for a reason. That story was not just about losing an animal companion. It was about Aang losing one of his last safe places in the world. And if live action plays that emotion in a heavier way, it could hurt on a whole different level. And honestly, I do not think it is random that Tudum also said there will be scenes in Season 2 that could make the audience cry. And if I am being real, one of the strongest storylines capable of carrying that kind of emotional destruction is Appa's storyline. Because Appa is not just a mount. Appa is Aang's past, his people, his childhood, and one of his last living connections. So if Netflix builds this the right way, Appa's loss could push Aang's anger and his lack of control over the Avatar state to a much harsher place. And Katara and Sokka also become very important here, because when Appa disappears, it is not just Aang who suffers. The group's balance is broken, their sense of direction collapses, and the structure that felt like a family starts to fall apart. If live action handles that well, then Appa's return will not feel like just a happy reunion scene. It will also feel like the rebuilding of the group itself. So if they make the emotional weight of this storyline harsher, one of the most effective scenes of the season could very easily come from here. And on the overall structure side, this is something else I have been thinking about. Netflix will most likely build Book 2 not as a line of individual adventures, like in the animation, but as a more connected and compressed narrative. Because in the animated version, episodes like The Blind Bandit, City of Walls and Secrets, Appa's Lost Days, and Lake Laogai all have time to breathe. But because the live-action series has a limited episode count, some of those events may end up being connected much more directly. That means Toph's arrival, the Ba Sing Se intrigue, Jet's pursuit, and the Appa storyline could all come as one tightly woven major flow. And honestly, that does not have to be a bad thing. Because even if they do not follow the exact same order, the story can still work as long as the emotional backbone stays strong. I think the critical thing here is not faithfulness to sequence, but faithfulness to essence. Does Toph still feel like Toph? Does Zuko's conflict still hurt us the way it should? Does Iroh still carry that balance? Does Aang's collapse still hit us hard? If those things stay intact, then people will accept changes in the order of events. And this is exactly where the fandom is split in two. One side says, do not touch the animation. The other side says, if we are just going to watch the exact same thing, then why does the live action even exist? My own view is somewhere in the middle. I think changes can be made, and sometimes they absolutely should be, but not just for the sake of surprise. They should be made because they deepen the characters, the conflict, and the emotional impact. If Netflix can pull that off in Season 2, then what we could get is not just a different adaptation, but a genuinely strong reinterpretation. So at the end of the video, I think this needs to be said clearly. None of this is confirmed right now. Everything we are talking about before Season 2 comes out is based on predictions built from the choices Netflix made in Season 1. But the nice thing is this. These predictions are not random. We already have a pattern. They brought Azula in early. They expanded the Fire Nation side. They raised the dramatic tone. And they made certain relationships feel more intense right from the beginning. So if we see similar bold choices again in Season 2, I honestly would not be surprised at all. And to be completely honest, if it is done right, I am not afraid of that at all. Because the heart of Avatar was never just the order of events. It was always the heart of the characters, their bonds, their breaking points, and their spirit. If the live-action Season 2 can preserve that and build on it with a slightly harsher, slightly more mature, and slightly more emotional style of storytelling, then we could get a really powerful season. In fact, it could even become a season that gets talked about more precisely because it is different from the animation in some places. Now, the thing I am most curious about is what you think. Do you think Netflix should stay faithful to the animation in Season 2, or should it make some major story changes and give us a more different interpretation of Book 2? Which possibility makes the most sense to you? The Azula-Zuko conflict being pushed earlier, Toph getting a darker introduction, Jet's espionage storyline getting bigger, Iroh's White Lotus side being revealed earlier, or Appa's loss hitting Aang in a much harsher way? Be sure to write it in the comments, because this is one of those topics you could talk about forever. And if you liked the video, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe for more Avatar content. See you in the next video, and take care.